RWBY Volume 4, World of Remnant, Episode 7, Schnee Dust Company. Now this is without a doubt one of my favorite World of Remnant episodes that we've had throughout the entire series. Never would have expected it, to be completely honest. I didn't think there was much of a need to give us the history of a company, even though of course it pertains to Weiss and her family, which has become even more important now that Weiss is, back home. But it just never seemed to be that big of a deal. It's like, okay, well, obviously they kind of found a mine. I mean, if you know mines, you kind of know how it works. Like the gold rush, all right, they found dust. It seemed simple enough as far as I was concerned. I never thought we'd get any, backstory to that. But I thought it was really cool. We get to see. They even have like a minute design where they talk about basically, because of course I suck at names. I don't remember the person's name who started the company, but they give him like like a red scarf and everything. And I was like, wow, they. Even when they normally tell stories, it's not that important, but they give him like an actual like very minute design. I don't think that'll actually lead to anything where we might see a picture of this person, because that's been something that I think more than previous volumes they've really been connecting. Like, hey, we talked about this thing. Maybe you should expect a lot of this in the next episode. And I'm very curious how that's going to play out, because considering last week's episode where it was, of course, it started with Weiss and stuff having her drama, and then the extra drama really came in the second half with the battle. I'm curious what they're going to do with next week's episode, which we will be getting. There will be a normal episode on Christmas Eve, which is kind of crazy because I thought for sure that's what was going to happen this week. So I was kind of super surprised that we were getting a World of Remnant episode. That kind of blew my mind. I was like, oh, I thought for sure they would do it this week, and then, however they're going to do, mid-season finales or whatever, how they're going to do it with RWBY. But I was like, I thought for sure they wouldn't do that, because it's literally going to be the holidays, the very next day. So that really surprised me. Someone did mention in the comments, so I don't actually know that 100%, but maybe they have some info I don't have. You guys will have to tell me officially, but that's what I read in the comments, so it must be true. But I like the information we got. We get the story of this character and how he grew up and he was training all the time. He was working with his father the rest of the time, and then somehow, even with the rest of his time, he was studying to learn things that he didn't know. So he was a crazy hardworking person. And after his father passed away, he was given, everything that his father had, and it gave him just enough to start the actual Schnee Dust Company. And that's when he goes out and, like I said, kind of gold rush style. He found a deposit and poof, that was pretty much it. Like I said, that was my guess as to how everything played out. And then he goes into the deeper stuff, and it's like, the reason that the company actually became so big wasn't actually just because, oh, he found a huge deposit, which is what I figured. It was like, oh, he found like a crazy super deposit, and because he had enough money, he was able to claim it for himself and hire guards and this and that. And so that's how it worked. But then we found out that the Schnee name was used for trust, or it was, kind of synonymous with trust, because all of his training allowed this guy to go out to all these different, continents and everything. And I thought that was cool. And I was like, he led these expeditions to where it was believed that there would be more dust. And I was like, I like that. I thought that was a really cool aspect to it, where he was the owner as well as the face of the company, and everyone saw his face when there was a new thing for the company. He was there to oversee that, and I was like, that's actually really cool. And it kind of made me just like, the creator of the company in general. I was like, that's a really cool person that would do that and risk his own life. And then it gets into some of the more modern territory, where this is a man that married and he had a family. We don't specifically know if he only had a daughter, because they don't truly specify that. They just say, he had a family. So Weiss and Winter, and I totally can't remember their brother's name, they may or may not have an aunt or uncle. They don't specify, but like I said, it's family. And that's where Jacques comes in, because Jacques was not a part of the Schnee family. He married into the family, and he was Jacques Jules. And I don't know why, but that just made me hate him more. I just don't like him in general. So it was kind of like, wow, he married into the family, and he's the reason that the company is kind of known for what it is now. It wasn't always that way, which is of course what I thought. It's like this grand company, and that was their father, so I just assumed that, of course, he took over from where his father took over and stuff like that, and where his parents came from. And it just continued down that path from the beginning. And it was just like, okay, they did these things, and as time went on, they just did, bad stuff. It's like, no, it was actually kind of cool. It's almost like the political, or not political, but the business version of the White Fang, where you have this really good person who takes over and, hires people, and, they don't go into all the specifics, but I would assume, considering how they talked about the guy, he did things right and he treated people with respect, whether human or faunus or whatever. And he got people to trust this company because they did good things around the entire world. And then Jacques comes in as the a-hole, and he's like, all right, we're just gonna, kind of like outsourcing, it's just like, well, let's do this, we're gonna make it super cheap because these people can't afford anything, so we'll give them like $1, and then they'll do all this work for us, and it's super easy, and we'll force the faunus to do everything, and all the humans will be super amazing. And he kind of led it down a darker path because he wanted to be kind of the elite human sort of thing, because he most likely does see faunus as subhuman. And I thought that was interesting. It was something I never considered that it ever changed. I just assumed the Schnee Dust Company was always this one thing where people didn't like it, specifically faunus, and that just wasn't the case. And I thought that was just really cool. Like, okay, so Jacques came in, kind of like, with Blake, where her father left, the White Fang. Like, it all started good, and then I don't know if that'll be a thing, but apparently when you start something big, the next person sucks, and they make it about, all this evil stuff so they can get rich. Or just, do whatever they want and kill a bunch of people. So it was just interesting, the parallels. And it brought up more parallels, with Weiss and Blake, where it's like, oh, it's not as connected. With Weiss is more her grandfather than her actual father. But it's kind of the same concept, where it started off as something good, and then the next person came in, and they're the ones that ruined it, and they made it something. They took the main concept, and then they warped it and took it down a darker path. And they do the same thing, just in a much, harsher way. So I love that extra bit of information, but it has me excited. I don't know, like I said, if this is going to be, well, I would assume it's going to be the last episode of the year, because it's Christmas and then New Year's right after. But it'll be interesting. I'm excited to see what they include of the Schnee Dust Company. Of course, Weiss does show up at the very end, and I'm sure her father will still live through this volume. I don't think that is going to go that far as her development. I'm still guessing that she's just going to go through kind of what we see in the opening, where she eventually creates her summon and she just breaks out on her own. Maybe Ironwood will help her out because he's become super awesome. Jacques took his place because he came in kind of harsh in the last volume. And I love Ironwood now. He's really cool. And Jacques is like a million times more of an a-hole, even from his first moments. So I'm curious to see what we're going to get from Weiss's side of the story in next week's episode. But this is really fun. I really, like I said, I never considered that there would be any extra information. Like, even the beginnings of it is like, okay, well, it started here and then it became this. But there's so much more involved in that. We still, of course, haven't even seen, the daughter of the man that actually created this company, because she was just drinking wine in the garden last time. Like, oh, that's their family. So we still haven't seen her. Like I said, we don't know if, the creator of this company had more than one child. Maybe he never had any sons, because that seemed to be like the whole thing, where it's kind of super old school. Like, oh, I need a man, to kind of take over the business, that sort of deal. So I'm assuming that if he has more children, that they're all girls, or maybe there's something super tragic where maybe he had a son and he died or something like that. But I love this story for this. It kind of makes me interested in some other businesses that are a bit more minor. Maybe not From Dusk to Dawn. That would be hilarious if they did like a full World of Remnant episode on that old guy, and we find out he really does have just like a bunch of siblings that they were all born at once, which would be insane. But it just makes me curious about the world, because at this point it's the White Fang and the Schnee Dust Company that are like, I mean, of course the White Fang technically aren't a business, but those are basically the two businesses in the whole series. And then the schools kind of they're just like schools, and that seems like it. But it was really cool. I love this one. And like I said, with the way they've done the World of Remnant episodes, where it's like, hey, this is what, like with the Raiders, it was like, this is what Raiders do when they go into these minor cities. And it's like, oh, that's what happened in that last episode, and that's, this is how they do that. And then the very next episode, Raven came in, and we find out she's a part of, those Raiders. And I'm just excited to see where they take it. I highly doubt that Weiss is going to be escaping in this next episode, but I'm looking forward to possibly seeing Winter, considering what happened in the last episode where she made an unintentional summon. I think her father might bring Winter in and say, like, hey, since all he wants to do is control, it's like, hey, control your little sister, tell her exactly how to control this and make it work so she doesn't embarrass me. That might be an exact line. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he was like, Winter, teach your sister how to not lose control so we aren't embarrassed. I would not be surprised if we heard that next week. But love this episode, of course. Definitely want to know what you guys thought about it. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, least favorite parts. And this was a surprising one for me. I think with there being more backstory than I ever would have expected. I would love to know, now that, they might have a lot of extra backstory, what characters or, little organizations or anything that you could think of where it was like on the surface, it seemed like nothing, but now that we've gotten something like this where they could always make up whatever they want for an interesting backstory, what do you think that they could expand upon that you would love to see? Because some stuff they've kind of introduced to us, how Menagerie came about. We even got a bit of that from actual dialogue in last week's episode, which was really cool. But I feel like, of course there's so much that we still don't know. I always bring this up, but I really want to know what's going on with semblances and exactly how all that plays out. So I know they're saving that. I would love to see that this volume, maybe like the last one in this volume, is going to be, semblances. But I kind of doubt it because it's kind of focusing on like, hey, here's this thing, which ties directly into the very next episode we watch. So maybe when John does his thing, we'll finally get that semblance episode. But until then, that's my thing. But as far as stuff that I've seen in the show that typically, it's kind of just been like, man, no big deal. I think the schools kind of need more backstory. Now that I've seen the extra stuff on the Dust Company, I want to know why the schools are the way that they are. Of course, they're different based on like, oh, this comes from this high class society, and you notice that when they do the turn, I think it was when it was the tournament, they have all the schools, and I want to say it was maybe Vacuo that they didn't even have uniforms or something like that, and it just makes me wonder, like, how did the schools come about as these, literally as these beacons, within the world? Like, why are these the most important things? Why wouldn't it be, other sorts of things, or, like the Schnee Dust Company? Why aren't there more companies like that? Or why aren't there, why is there no competition? Why aren't there other things like that? As far as the technology goes, there's a lot we don't know about that either. We'll have the little bit about the towers and how basically their internet is based off of 4, pyres, and if one goes down, we're all boned as far as long range goes. But I think technology in the schools are the two big things where it's like there's definitely more stuff we can learn about that, and either how the stuff came about, maybe some of the relevance as to who created certain technology, specifically if they ever even bothered doing this, who was like the first person to ever make, really make weapons that transformed. Things like that I think are very interesting, and was that, dust based, or is that solely mechanical based? Things like that I think would be fairly interesting. But we'll love to know what you guys would like to see from the World of Remnant series as usual. But I also want to know what you guys thought about this episode, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.